And welcome back to MVM. Today I am bringing you a preview of Crimopolis from Cheap Sheep Games. This is a new mafia crime style game that is coming out soon. It is on Kickstarter right now, but this is a game where you are going to be building out a city and performing several gangster type actions, including muscling other players, completing crime activities, and things like that in order to score the most points. So I wanted to break down everything that kind of comes with this game, and you're going to see it all spread out here in front of me. But this is, of course, a Kickstarter prototype. So what's probably going to draw your eye most is the three-dimensional board that actually is going to sit on top of the game box. Now, this board is a church and graveyard, and it acts as the score tracker for the game. As you score points, you are moving your piece around the board. The first person to hit 21 points is going to trigger the end of the game. At that point, everyone is going to finish the round, and then you're going to do any kind of final scoring or anything like that. You have to determine who is going to be the winner. In addition, inside this church, if you lift off the lid, you're going to see little tombstones. And these tombstones are your body count. As you take out other gangsters, you're going to be putting tombstones into your colored plot of this graveyard here, and these are going to be worth points at the end of the game. So you're actually inspired to kind of off your opponents and send them to the graveyard here. In addition, you're going to see a few stacks of tiles, and you're going to see these tiles again out here on the game board. You're going to be able to explore and expand this city, and you're going to need certain locations out on the board in order to complete certain jobs. If you notice, the way that these city blocks come together, they're going to form streets. And these streets are where the main movement of the game is going to take place. Some of these blocks, like these here, are large and they have to connect to each other exactly. Every time you place a tile down, it has to connect orthogonally and the streets have to line up. In addition, you're going to see a few decks of cards. You have your fortune deck. And these fortune cards can be drawn on your turn, and they're going to just have a variety of effects to kind of mess with your opponents. You're going to be able to do any kind of standard crime mafia thing. You've got your car bombs, drive-by shootings, things like that. All of that criminal activity you can find in this fortune deck. In addition, you're going to have a deck of news flash cards or headlines. These resemble a newspaper, and every time you commit a criminal activity or complete a job in the game, you're going to have to draw these and perform the effects. Sometimes these will benefit you, maybe they'll benefit your opponents, but they can also hurt you. So when you're performing too many criminal jobs, you're going to attract too much attention. And then lastly, you're going to have the job deck. And at the start of the game, each player is going to be dealt out 2 of these job cards. And I will kind of break down what a job card looks like, because this is the core of the game right here. In a job card, you're going to have the name of a type of building. You're going to need to find this same type of building out on the board, and they're all color-coded. In addition, it's going to show you how many gangsters you need to complete that task, how much time it requires to complete that task, and how many victory points that job is worth. So everyone's going to get these 2, and they're going to set them in front of you. Completing jobs is the best way to score victory points and try to reach that 21-point goal. So you've noticed that I've already started setting up the game. At the beginning of the game, everyone is going to have a headquarters that they're going to place out in the board. You're going to start with 1 player who places their headquarters, and then 2 buildings from the stack touching it. And you're going to do that for each player. It's coming around to the red player's turn, so the red player will have to play their headquarters somewhere connected to this city that's already in progress. For example, I could place my headquarters here, and I look at the 2 tiles I have available. In this case, a church and a post office. Now, I might look at my job cards here and try to figure out if one of these maybe reflects the cards because I want to be close by my target. But in this case, I will place the post office, and then we refresh from the top of the stack, and then I could place a bank, for example. And there are always going to be 2 buildings in the market available to choose from, so you always know kind of what is going to come into the city next. Once everybody has set up just like this, you're going to put one of your gangsters on your headquarters. They start the game there, and then the first player is going to be able to take their actions. Now, the way actions work in this game is very interesting because you are given a certain number of hours, and the game comes with this clock. And again, like I said, this is a prototype, so None of this artwork, including the tile and card artwork and the minis, none of it is final. But you're going to be given this clock, and it has a handy dandy breakdown of all the actions you can do on the back and how much time they take up. You're going to be given 7 hours, but every time you take actions, you're going to lower that in order to do those actions. If you end your turn with time left on the clock, for example, if I decide I want to pass with 3 hours left, those 3 hours go to the next player. They're going to get 10 hours to do their actions. So you really want to make great use of your actions. So you might be wondering what all the actions are, because that is the meat of the game. It comes to you, you try to take the most actions you can take that kind of equal 7. So you can recruit, which takes 2 hours off your clock. Recruiting is simple. You're going to take one of your figures and place it out on your headquarters. In addition, if you've already built your safe house, you could place it on your safe house and kind of spread your troops out along the board, but you'll just take one of your guys and put it on your headquarters. It's very simple. The next action you're going to do is move. Now, all of your characters are going to start off in a building or city block. Your first action to move them is going to be to move them on the street. You can move up to 3 people in one move. So I could take both these guys and move them out here onto the street. Now, you'll notice a street segment here, an intersection with a new street segment here. So once they're already on the street, I can move them again. I can move them around wherever I want to go. And remember, you can do these actions multiple times, but what you can't do is split it up. So I can't take both these guys and move them into 2 separate spaces. If I wanted to do that, it would actually take 2 of those move actions in order to do that. When you're moving, there's a few things that can happen. For example, if I were to take my figure and move it into this space where he is adjacent to an empty space, I can explore for free. I can take one of these 2 tiles and I can place it there. In addition, if I'm exploring somewhere maybe farther away, I can always choose to play my safe house instead of one of those 2 buildings, and I can take my safe house and place it there. Now when I recruit, I can bring figures out in that safe house, and this is a way to hedge your bets. You're only ever going to have 1 headquarters and 1 safe house, so you have to kind of spread them out so that you can get the most jobs, all right? So that is exploring, but you can also get into combat as you move. If I'm moving into a space another player is, for example, red moves into yellow, a combat will happen. Combat is very deterministic and very simple. Each player is going to eliminate 1 figure until only 1 player is left standing. In this case, since I have 1 red figure and 1 yellow figure, both of these would go away. They'd be removed from the game. And since the red player initiated the combat, they're burying 2 bodies, their own and the yellow. Isn't there something about when you seek vengeance, dig 2 graves? Well, that's what's happening. So you're going to put 2 tombstones out. So you'll go into the church and the red player will place 2 tombstones. And these tombstones, like I said earlier, are worth points at the end of the game. You don't get that point immediately, so it doesn't trigger that 21-point goal. If you had come in, for example, if red had come in with 2 players instead of 1, then these would go and the 1 red figure would remain. That's incredibly important when it comes to stealing buildings from players, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The next thing you can do is occupy a building, and this takes 3 of your hours. So again, you're going to be ticking down this clock 3 hours in order to take that occupy action. You can take up to 3 of your figures that are adjacent to a building, and you can move them all into the building. That is going to occupy it. That is going to allow you to score points for controlling that. In addition, if there is already somebody in there, so if yellow had already been in here when I occupy that space, now we're going to trigger combat just like on the streets. Red and yellow are both going to lose a guy, but red still has people remaining. Now, you can never just take someone out of a building. So if yellow was here and red decided to come in and do a move like that where they'd both be removed, you can't legally do that. You have to at least have 1 guy remaining to take over the control of that building. So in this case, red would now hold that doctor's office. The most you can ever move into a building is 3, unless you have a specific job card that tells you that you can move more in. In addition, whenever you occupy a building, you're going to score a point for taking it over for another player. So you're going to score points for occupying buildings, and you're going to score points for completing those jobs. You might decide somewhere along the way that you want to abort one of your jobs in process. You can do that, again, by spending time on the clock. 2 hours will allow you to abort your jobs. You can basically discard your jobs to a discard pile, draw new jobs, and mix and match with your hand and come out with a new hand of 2 cards. And maybe you're going to have some better jobs that are more reasonable for you to complete. Because that is the next thing you can do, which is going to complete these jobs. And like I said earlier, each job has, first of all, a requirement of how many figures it takes to take over that building. So for example, to go into the park with this, I would need 1 person next to the park. Now you can never move from one building to the next. You have to be in the street in order to achieve that. But for example, the green player would be able to complete this because it only requires 1. In addition, it takes 3 hours. So you're losing 3 hours again on that clock because that's actions you're not going to be able to take. And then you're going to get 1 victory point for that, and you're going to get that victory point immediately. So you're going to move up 1 on that point there. If at any point when you're completing jobs, you look at your hand and you have 2 of the exact same job, you can reveal those to every player, discard them, and draw 2 new jobs. So you're never stuck in a situation where you can't complete jobs. Also, you can never complete a job where you've already been that round. So if I'm already in the doctor's office and I have a job that targets the doctor, I can't simply move right out, then complete the job to move him in. I was already there that round. I have to move out and then wait for it to come back around to me, and then on my next turn, I can play the job and move in and take it. Now keep in mind, whenever you complete a job, you have to draw that newsflash card. And this newsflash card is going to be just something completely random that affects you or other players. Now, you've already completed the job, you already get the points, so this newsflash is not going to prohibit you from getting those points. This just represents the focus you've drawn on yourself by completing these criminal activities. So you're going to play the newsflash card, follow the effects, but you're still going to get those victory points no matter what. The last thing you can do on your turn is try to secure a fortune. And this securing a fortune takes 2 hours off this clock. You're just going to draw one of those fortune cards. And these fortune cards are going to sit in your hand until you play them. Now, these can affect other players negatively and take that element. Some of them, like this one that just gives you an extra 3 hours on your turn, is actually you can play this on yourself in order to boost your abilities. And there are a large variety of these fortune cards in this deck, so you don't exactly know what you're going to get, something that's going to help you or hurt your opponents, but in general, they're going to help you positively in some way. The last thing, again, if you decide you'd want to pass, you can do that, but all your remaining time is going to go to your opponent. After you're done, you're going to pass the clock, you're going to pass the player marker, and then the next player is going to take their same 7 hours or maybe more actions, and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be moving around, eliminating people, completing jobs, and things like that. So the game is going to continue in that fashion until one player reaches 21 points. At that point, you're going to count up all of your tombstones. You're going to get 1 victory point for every 2 tombstones that you have in play. And then you're going to get points from some of your fortune cards that are going to give you in-game scoring. After you've decided all that, you'll have a winner, and they're crowned King of Crimopolis. They're the chief mafia there. So that is Crimopolis. It is on Kickstarter right now. So take a look to see maybe some of the more final artwork, or at least closer to final artwork in production on all these, including the minis and figures that are going to come. They're going to be unique for each different faction in the game. So take a look at that and then come back here, ask questions, leave comments, and I'll try to respond to everything. And as always, thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, and following us, and I will see you next time.